Hello and welcome to this Team IELTS lesson introducing Academic Writing Task 1. My name is Sarah Philpott and I'm a co-founder of Team IELTS. So first of all, thank you for visiting teamielts.com and accessing this lesson. But don't miss out on our other help with your IELTS preparation, including vocabulary and grammar packs, other lesson packs, and our blogs. And also, do follow us on social media. Okay, so first of all, I'm just going to go through how this lesson works. So obviously you can do this lesson at your own pace, pausing whenever you need to, stopping and starting. You can stop and go and make yourself a cup of tea or a cup of coffee if you want to. And you can pause now if you want to, if you haven't already got a piece of paper and a pen and pencil, because I am going to be asking you to do some exercises. And of course, pause the lesson when I ask you to do the exercises and then restart to check your answers with me. Okay, so let's go through the program. So what we're going to look at in this introductory lesson? Okay, first of all, obviously, we're going to look at the most essential facts, if you like, information about academic writing task 1. And we're going to look at what the examiner is looking for, how they will assess your work. We're also going to look at what the question looks like. So what sort of data types might you have to deal with? Also going to briefly discuss how you should lay out your written answer, your report, and going to finalise with some top tips for writing task 1. Okay, so I'm going to turn my camera off now so that you can better concentrate on the lesson, and I'll turn it back on again towards the end. Okay, I expect you know quite a lot about academic writing task 1 already. So here's a little test. Pause the lesson and on a piece of paper or on your device, write the numbers 1 to 6, read the statements and decide if they are true or false. Once you've decided, restart the lesson to go through the answers. Okay, so welcome back. You will be expected to describe the data. That's absolutely true. That's what academic writing task 1 is. You'll be expected to analyse the data. No, you don't have to analyse it or explain why it's happening. You just describe it. You need to write a maximum of 150 words, not at all. In fact, the next one is true. It's a minimum of 150 words. But I think it's good advice that you'll probably need to write between 170 and 190 words, depending on the type of diagram and the amount of data, for a really complete answer. You should spend a minimum of 20 minutes on the task. No, of course not, because you should spend a maximum of 20 minutes on task 1 to leave yourself 40 minutes for the longer task 2. Okay, so let's look at what the examiner is looking for. So the examiner will assess your task 1 answer using 4 different criteria. I wonder if you know what they are. I expect you do. Again, if you want to, pause the lesson, look at the marking criteria taken from IELTS.org for bands 6 and 7, and write down the missing names of the criteria. Restart the lesson when you are ready for the answers. Okay, let's go through them together. So the first criterion is task achievement, which is basically how well and how fully have you answered the question and have you put in the correct data to support your answer. The second one is coherence and cohesion. So coherence is the thread running through your answer, that you've written it in a logical order. And cohesion is all about how you link your ideas within sentences, within the paragraph. So using words like however, whereas, those sort of linking words or cohesive devices. The third one is lexical resource, vocabulary. Showing that you can use a range of vocabulary, including perhaps collocations and some less common words and phrases. And then the last category is, of course, grammar, grammatical range and accuracy. So ranges, can you use both simple and more complex sentence structures? And obviously accuracy, do you use them correctly? I've only taken this from bands 6 and 7, and I've only got the information for the academic writing task 1. So, but if you want the full band score descriptors, just go to www.ielts.org and you'll find them there. Okay, so that's what the examiner is looking for. So let's go to you and what you'll be dealing with. So what the question looks like. There are, again, a little quiz. Pause the lesson and match each picture A to F with its name 1 to 6. So these are the 6 types of data that you may have to cope with in your test. Once you've done that, restart the lesson to get the answers. Okay, so A, obviously a line graph. B is the pie chart. C is the bar chart. D is a table. E is a map or plan. And F, of course, is the process diagram. There are separate lessons that will help you with writing an appropriate answer by providing a strategy for approaching each diagram type and the vocabulary you'll need, as well as some help with specific grammar areas needed for a higher level answer. So do check out our other separate lessons. So our lesson on bar charts, our lesson on line graphs, to help you in your preparation. Okay, so that's what the data will look like. What about your report? So all task 1 types can be written in this format, okay? So it doesn't matter whether it's a bar chart or a map or a plan, it can be presented in this way. So the first bit is, and very important, is the introduction. And it's essential that your introduction contains 2 parts. A rephrasing of what the question is, using your own words, not copying from the question. So rephrasing using synonyms. Then this is followed by a description of the main trend or trends, event, changes, etc. And that is the overview. And that is very, very important. So together, those 2 things comprise your introduction. Before we look at the other bits, let's have a look at why the overview is important. Again, this is just a snippet from the band descriptors, but it's looking at band 7 and 6 again for task achievement. Now, at 6, you need to at least attempt to write an overview. However, for 7 and above, you have to present a clear overview. So it's something that really is worth practicing. And we will look at the different types of overview for the different data types in our other writing task 1 lessons. So do check them out. So let's go back to what your report should look like. Okay, so we've said the introduction is those 2 parts, the rephrasing of the title and the overview, but the body paragraph is where you select the parts of the diagram that support your overview, and then you use those to get the data, and that's what you write into the body paragraph or body paragraphs. Whether you write 1 paragraph or 2 paragraphs depends a lot on the data how much data there is or diagram type, but in fact, you're not judged or assessed on writing paragraphs until band score 8. So don't worry about whether you write 1 or 2 body paragraphs. And the conclusion, that's the body paragraphs. And the conclusion, only write the conclusion if you have time. You do not get a higher band score if you do write a conclusion, but you do not get a lower score if you don't write a conclusion. So it's not an essential part of a report. So really focus your time, energy on the introduction and the body paragraph. Okay. Okay, so let's move on to sort of a typical question, if you will. So it's really important that you understand the question. So here's a typical question. The diagram below shows the number of individual visits to various websites in New Zealand from 2014 to 2023. And then you've got the instructions. And the instructions are the same for every task 1 question. So it's important that you notice these words I've put in bold and underlining. So we've got summarize. So we're not writing about the whole thing, and we summarize by selecting and reporting the main features. In 20 minutes, you don't have time to write about everything. And it's important that where you can and where it's relevant, that you make comparisons. Okay, but before you start writing, you need to really spend a minute looking at the question itself, the data type. So I'm going to put some questions up now. And what I'd like you to do is to pause the lesson, write your answers on a piece of paper, and then restart the lesson to check your answers with me. Okay, let's look at question 1. What form is the data in on the vertical axis? Well, obviously that's in millions of visits. What form is the data in on the horizontal axis? That's very clear. Okay, so it's in years. And this is a bit of a trick question. How many years are represented? Okay, it's 10 years, not 9. Sometimes people look at a diagram like this and they see 2014 and 2023 and they think that's 9 years. That's just over a 10-year period. So do check you get that right. And what exactly is it all about? What's being represented? That's a number of individual visits to various websites. And how many items are there? There's 4, there's shopping, news, sports news, and weather. Okay, so that's the thing you should do, just taking a minute before you start writing. Okay. Let me put my camera back on and see you back again. Let's go then through our top tips. So do make sure that you practice all the different diagram types, the bar charts, the plans, the process diagrams, all of it before you test, because there's no way of your knowing in advance what data type, diagram type you're going to have. Make sure you understand that different data types will have slightly different lexical groups, different types of vocabulary you'll need. Make sure you're aware of those. Again, our lessons do give you the vocabulary that you need for different diagrams. Look very carefully at the band descriptors for the band score you need, and then understand what you have to do to get that score. Okay, so don't bother to look at 8 if you only want a 7. Don't bother to look at 6 if you need a 5. Just look at where you need and work out what you need to do. Do read the instructions very, very carefully so that you know exactly what you have to do. And remember, write at least 150 words. Do you remember how many words I said would probably be a good answer? 170 to 190. And do remember to spend only a maximum of 20 minutes on this task. You must have 40 minutes for writing task 2. Okay, so that's the end of the introduction. As I said, do check out our other resources. So we've got other lesson packs which will go through those data types with the vocabulary and how to write them. So look at those. We have vocabulary and grammar packs and we have our blogs. So do check those things out. But for now, thank you very much for coming to this lesson and good luck with your IELTS test preparation. Sarah Philpott for Team IELTS saying goodbye.